panelists could come up, and I can, I'll just kind of kick things off. I don't. Whatever you prefer. I'll fill in once I move over. So hi everybody. Thanks for. I know this is like a bit of a marathon these days, and we're getting toward the end. I think we're the second to last this afternoon. So thanks for sticking with us. It's been a few years since I've been at the DSA conference actually, and I was involved in the early days of it. Folks like Alan and I were involved in the creation of the DSA, so it's really great to be here again. And I feel like it's like for me it's like a professional development opportunity, to be honest with you. I feel like I should like mark it down on my time sheets as professional development because I learned so much just listening to all of you. So my name is Paul Garnett. I run a consulting firm called Vernonburg Group, and we focus 100% on helping clients close the global digital divide. So we do anything from policy work to project feasibilities to helping companies raise capital, things with broadband data, economic modeling, that sort of stuff. So that's the sort of the consulting side of what I do. And then more recently, we've begun pulling together a fund called Connect 1 Billion, which is focused on investing in early stage internet service providers that have high potential and are located in low and middle income countries. So this is like this whole digital inclusion thing is like all I do, and it's a decision I made several years ago that I wanted to focus on this. Most of the day today we haven't talked about this topic, right? I mean, Alessandra, your presentation was very much focused on it, and Michael just from Amazon Leo. Obviously, that's an area that is a focus of his company. But one thing that has not changed a lot, and this isn't like a negative comment, but a lot of the focus of this group is on use cases and new technology development that helps people who already have connectivity, not people who don't have connectivity at all. It's sort of like all about making things better for people who already have something and not necessarily focusing on those who have nothing. So this panel is about, it's about helping people get everything that we're talking about, but also sort of getting them on the on-ramp and begin having access to the internet. For this panel, we've got a really great group of panelists with some very interesting backgrounds and different perspectives and from different parts of the world. So to my left is Paul Colmer, who's here with us from South Africa, and I'm going to let them all introduce themselves a little more in a second. To his left is Christiane Sanches from Abrint in Brazil. To her left is Sergiu Nedevschi from Tarana Wireless, which is a fixed wireless technology company. And to his left is Marcelo Valenzuela from NIC and the University of Chile, in Chile. So what I'm going to do is just kick it off with just kind of a high-level question. If you could just, in no particular order, introduce yourselves and what your organization does, and just very quickly, sort of your experiences with, and this could be like an entire. I know every single one of you is like an expert, and we could spend like 45 minutes each on this one. But just briefly talk about the kinds of things you're doing on helping to close the digital divide, and then we'll get into the specific questions after that. Thank you.
Okay, I'm off. Okay, my name's Paul Colmer, and I sit on the executive committee and run Wapa, which is the Wireless Access Providers Association of South Africa. We are an MPO currently with around 250 members, of which 200 of them are licensed WISP service providers. I look after them with regards to regulatory compliance as an interface between ICASA, the government, and generally try to keep them in a functional environment in a very difficult. They are by nature special needs children, and they require a lot of effort. The majority of them are SMMEs. We do have some larger operators and members, but at least 90% are very small individual companies. Now, with regards to the digital divide or unserviced communities, the Wapa WISP providers have always thrived in smaller towns and outside of the metro and urban areas where the fiber players have now sort of dominated. And we operate our networks differently in the way that the major ISPs are call centers, they box drop to the door. We're more feet on the ground in the communities and have recently sort of moved out into no man's land to really go and unconnect the unconnected. But it's not a problem of people out there being unconnected. There's cell signal over South Africa in a lot of places. It's not about access to connectivity. It's access to affordable connectivity. And us as WAPA and our members, we've devised hotspot models and even fixed wireless models in certain cases where we are offering uncapped services for 24 hours for R5 a day. To put that in perspective, that is 30 US cents. Work out in your mind how you can build networks with that value. Remember, that's not a lot of money, but we are getting it right slowly, township by township, rural area by rural area, the places that everyone else has left behind. That's our goal, that's our mission, and we hope to fulfill it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chris.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the DSA for the invitation. My name is Christiane Sanches. I'm from Abrint. Abrint is an association of ISPs in Brazil. We are talking about 2,200 associates. So we are a major association, and we are very proud of each our members. In Brazil, we have a lot of discussions. We have conception discussions regarding fair share, for example. We have a lot of discussions regarding the spectrum, availability, and we care about infrastructure, not just as infrastructure, as an asset, but as a mean, a way to achieve remote areas and people that are disconnected. In our country, we are not just talking about affordability, but we are also talking about regulatory approaches. So when we see what, for example, Matt told us here, what is the problem? The problem is nowadays the regulator, and it lacks a little bit of post-regulatory approach for them. We have to think that all the assets in telecommunications are made for people, not for profit. In this sense, we could reach the 2.6 billion people that are still unconnected. We have the report, the ended report in GSR, telling that we need $2.6 trillion to connect these 2.6 billion people. So this is not just about numbers, it's about possibilities, real possibilities. So in Brazil, we deal with a secondary basis approach for spectrum, dynamic approach and hybrid approach for spectrum. All those discussions are under the table, including, of course, the 6 gigahertz. Then we can tell you about a little bit more what is happening in Brazil.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sergiu. I'm with Tarana Wireless. Thank you for the invitation and for the gracious guest host here. I've been in this field trying to tackle the digital divide for about 20 years right now, since I was working on this in my PhD at Cal. And about 17 years earlier, I founded Tarana Wireless with the goal of using spatial processing technology to really advance the performance of wireless systems in fixed wireless application by order of magnitude. And by spatial processing, I mean, Matt here at Cisco mentioned about steering beams, or basically steering energy in the desired direction. That's called beamforming, or shaping your antenna patterns such that you can create deep knobs in the antenna pattern itself and hence protect yourself from the interferer and also protect the interferer from you. And spatial multiplexing, which means the ability to use the spectrum again and again by steering multiple beams simultaneously, all from one radio. Those are examples of spatial processing. And in order to implement those advanced technologies in fixed wireless radios, we actually took the hard route, and we're kind of the odd duck in terms of not being either Wi-Fi or 5G. We actually had to build a physical layer and entire protocol stack from scratch. Took us about 15 years to get it done. But right now, after all of this work, what we can do is fairly unique. We can provide fiber class connectivity in no-line of sight environments in a fixed wireless solution that is optimized to leverage unlicensed and shared spectrum in order to deliver this.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for the organization, for allowing me to be here talking with you. I come from Chile, a long and thin country that's located at the south of Latin America. What most of the people that are from Chile don't know is that as you go south to the country, it becomes more and more challenging to connect people. Let's say wirelessly, and the north is desert, there's no trees, the landscape is very flat, so it's not real, there's not a lot of challenge connecting people. But if you get down, the weather and the trees are taller and the mountain range, it makes it very, very, very hard. And I cannot think, when I'm watching at the microphone, the little screen, it says 617 megahertz. It's very hard when you are not able to connect, you don't have the line of sight or near line of sight in these places that we work. We have been working for 10 years, and there's spectrum available, and now and then we get this equipment that can work in, let's say, UHF bands, and we're able to connect these people because there's two things that we're lacking: equipment, and the regulatory body doesn't allow that we can transmit internet through certain waves that in other parts of the world it is possible. So the first thing that I want to tell you is that we're a technology center in the University of Chile, and we don't do this for business. We do this as part of our public mission to try everything that we can to connect the unconnected. Only in the last 2 years, we have been connecting around 300 indigenous places and very, very rural places. We have tried all, if we can, fiber, but most of the time, 70% we have to go with terrestrial wireless links, and 20% we can, it's simply too expensive to do it through terrestrial networks, so we have to go satellite. And to everybody here that has some new technology that they want a place to try it out, please talk to me after this panel, because we have dozens, if not hundreds, of ISPs that are willing to test equipment on these very extreme places. So just tell you that we need, sometimes we have the private people, we have the public, the government, everybody wants to go forward. But sadly, for example, in our case, many of our projects, we have to delay them because we need to be asking for experimental permits. Simply it's not there, the regulatory, it should be more fast. And although we want to push it forward, we are delayed all the time.
Okay, so let me just build on Marcelo, your comments on the use of fixed wireless and satellite, and fiber. So kind of interested in getting, especially given the fact that all of you have been involved in projects in the field and have sort of practical experience in terms of network deployments, either directly or through members. Just really interested in getting your thoughts on technology mix. We've seen a significant rise in the use of fiber to connect homes around the world. I mean, even in townships in South Africa, it's become a big thing in the last few years. At the same time, we've seen fixed wireless become really popular. In the U.S., for example, all the net adds right now are for fixed wireless technology deployments. And then we see the rise of next generation satellite with low Earth orbit satellites services from companies like Amazon and Starlink. And then also layered into that sort of standardized versus non-standardized technology. So I'd love to just hear sort of your thoughts on what is the kind of likely, or even if you have thoughts on the ideal technology mix for the kinds of deployments that you've been involved in.
Well, something that I didn't tell you about is that every project that we get involved with, we want to make it happen in a economically sustainable way, because we have seen it many times that we get some money to do a project, we make it happen, and then it's not able to sustain itself on the long term. And when you give internet to somebody, you cannot take it away. That's a crime. So the way we do it, because many, I don't know if it happens here, but at least in Chile, many people have, they say, hey, there's Starlink already, so we don't know to worry about it. But in these parts, people that live in these faraway places or in these indigenous communities, they cannot afford the capex or the opex for those kind of networks. They need something cheaper. And the way we have been able to deliver that as a country is by the small ISPs, and they start deploying their last mile. But their last mile cannot be deployed if they don't have access to a fiber backbone that allows them to develop their network. And the other part is when you start a network at the beginning, you have no client, so it's very hard for them being small. They don't have the budget to sustain that operation while they are starting to grow. So what we have been doing is we have tried to provide some capital for the beginning, especially give the technical expertise, because sometimes they need to mix different technologies, as you were telling. And what makes us, we're talking, especially for example, in these 300 places that we have been connecting, is places with terrorism. It's very hard to reach places, but also there are some other problems that make it especially challenging. And we have been able to advance in delivering internet in a sustainable way by keeping the low cost, trying to reuse the already the infrastructure that we had, the towers. And why I was telling you about the microphone thing, because many times when we deploy a network, there's always like a 5–10% of the people that we cannot reach because we don't have line of sight. But if we go lower, let's say UHF, we can reach them. However, that's when we start having problems with the permissions from the regulator. So it's a mixed.
Okay. And also just layering on top of that question, the ARPU point that you made, Paul. Maybe we can start with you, but $9 a month for home broadband service is very low, right? But this is typical in emerging markets. In the U.S., it's more like $70 a month is an average
20
ARPU.
here, 20.
20 where you are. So you have this range depending on stage of economic development, and so how does that also impact that choice of technology mix? Go ahead.
I'll take it. Look, from an SA African perspective, globally I hear that fiber is viable per square kilometre with 70 or more dwellings. But there's a harsh reality in rural Africa. If we had 70 dwellings per square kilometre, we would probably only get 10 to 20% uptake. It's just the nature of the people that are there. So fibre is not viable. So we're looking at wireless solutions. The challenge being is physically getting the backhaul there. Once we've done that, using fixed wireless in a multi-point situation, it becomes pretty easy from that point.
And these are Wi-Fi based?
Wi-Fi based, and the noise floors out there are pretty clean because no one else is doing anything there. So the backhaul is the challenge, and what's interesting, put things back in perspective, when we hear you guys talk about the 1 gig connected home, I'm sort of smiling in the background and thinking, wow, 1 gig. Well, you give me 1 gig of backhaul, and I'm building you a network with 500-600 clients in a rural market with 5 to 10 meg connections. That's the reality of the numbers out there. We can do that on 1 gig. So the backhaul is not about the cost. It's about the physicals of getting it there. Once we're there, we're good. And we can keep the price down. Now, we talked about this 5 rand a day uncapped, 30 US cents a day uncapped. Now, maybe prepaid cellular is already there. So just for interest, I'll tell you something. What do you think you can buy for 30 cents from Vodacom or MTN? The answer is nothing. Their cheapest offering is not 5 rand like us. It's 5 rand 50. But what do you get for that? Uncapped with us per day. With them, you get a whopping great 35 meg. That's the economics of Africa. Yeah? That's why there are video shops still up and running out there. You go to these places, there's a spaza shop, there's a video shop next door. Why are people still renting videos? Because they can't download a video or stream it on prepaid data. It's too expensive. You build a local hotspot, 5 rand a day. Sadly, the video shop collapses. But I'm talking now about the raw economics of what is happening out there and what and how we need to actually do that. Thanks, Paul.
Chris?
No, please.
Paul, in our country, we have a kind of unique statement for the market, for the fixed broadband market. We are talking about 20,000 ISPs. And those ISPs covered already almost 9% of all our territory with fibers. But we still have this 10% ahead. So what we need regulatory approach in order to achieve a solution that's not related to what we called licensee SLP in Brazil for community networks, for example. We do need also to reach spectrum, because in our country we are talking about 583 megahertz in Wi-Fi, an unlicensed basis. And when we talk about IMT, we have more than 14,000 already allocated. We have more than 1,000 already designated for IMT, and another almost 1,800 for future studies regarding the IMT. So what about those 583 in unlicensed basis? This is what we expect from our regulator, to share, to have opportunistic approach, to have different kind of view and hybrid solutions for using unlicensed spectrum in our country. Those ISPs in Brazil respond for 18 billion investment done in the last 4 quarters. So when we talk about then those small companies, we are talking in 18 billion reais. And the 3 biggest companies in Brazil that delivers fixed broadband as well invested only 10.2 billion. So almost more than 60% of all investments in our country on the last 3 years come from these small companies. So we do have to have a different approach, an asymmetric approach, in order to guarantee access to assets and also affordability. We are still with 64% of all market share. So those kind of information and data is supposed to be used by regulator in order to have an asymmetric approach and a data evidence approach for regulation. So when we have MOUs, for example, signed with UK government in 2020 for increasing community networks, it's a privilege from Brazil. And those experience must be followed for all the other related through regulation. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Hi. Just to maybe continue on the regulatory aspect of this
please.
discussion, I do believe that for fixed wireless solutions, especially the ones targeting the digital divide, that shared and unlicensed spectrum is extremely important. And that's because, first of all, it enables the many small businesses that have an interest or a stake in a specific community and care about bringing connectivity there. Licensed spectrum and mid-band could be used for this, but it turns out that most of the MNOs are not going to anchor their 3GPP deployments in fixed wireless. They're only going to anchor that if there is a need on the mobility network, because the economics don't really make sense for 3GPP to be deployed as standalone FWA. So what ends up happening is that in rural and remote environments, you're going to have coverage in the low bands. There's going to be no mid-band coverage, and nobody's going to go ahead and deploy a denser mid-band C-band solution in order to provide FWA there. So the task is left to, of course, satellite can be a very good solution, or for FWA, you need to leverage shared and unlicensed spectrum. Tarana has pushed a lot on a technical side to really increase the range in medium power solutions and 6 GHz standard power in order to basically get as good, if not better, coverage in non-line of sight environments when compared to a licensed approach. The way to do that, of course, has to do with making not only the transmitters transmit the energy in the right directions, but the receiver being much more sensitive, combining the multipath constructively in order to really reconstruct the best possible signal, beamforming. We have a lot of techniques that we've developed over the years to really stretch the range for standard power devices, such as the ones in 6 GHz, or even better, of course, CBRS-like power levels, which I would consider ideal for fixed wireless. The reason why I'm saying that is because they're really good compromise between having enough range to serve rural communities with sparse number of users, but the power is not so large where in a high density deployment you're going to cause too much interference. So it enables enough spectrum reuse in dense deployment for it to be really effective even in urban environments, while also having the kind of range that you need in very rural environments. And speaking about it in practical terms, currently Tarana has deployed a few 100,000 links, about half in CBRS and the other half in standard power 5 or 6 GHz. And even though the majority of these links only use 80 megahertz, the average performance across a link, we have all the stats because we monitor that in our cloud management system, the average performance is around 420 megs down and about 110 up in 80 megahertz. And we've recently introduced the G2 solution that doubles the bandwidth and it's already being used for RDOF deployments that have a demand of gigabit down and 500 up. This is something that has been used predominantly in rural environments up to this point, and now through partnerships with larger organizations, we're getting to basically overbuild in urban environments. And even though that's not to provide or to close the digital divide, that is to provide a more cost-effective, high-performing solutions to the households that find themselves in a monopoly and have to pay very high prices and not be very satisfied with the service that, say, cable companies provide them. So to recap, I think the medium power spectrum is very important. And if I were to lobby from a regulatory standpoint of view, I would say the following. I would really hope that standard power, 6 gigahertz, is being deployed as much as possible in other countries. I unfortunately don't see this being a priority in many places, and I think it's a shame because it will really enable the same kind of wireless deployments that a lot of WISPs in the United States are doing. The other thing that I would advocate for is lightly licensed approaches in 3.8 to 4.2. In Europe, for example, the CEPT has reached a European mandate for opening up 3.8 to 4.2 for local area networks at powers which are similar to CBRS, which would be a gold mine. In CBRS, we can achieve really, really good results in the United States. We would be able to do the same thing in Europe. And so I would really like to advise European regulators to hurry up and open those bands up so that they can be leveraged for the same. Thank you.
So any reactions to, so 6 gigahertz standard power and 3.8 to 4.2 gigahertz access? Any reactions from others?
I think when Charlie presented earlier, he talked a lot about it from a South African point of view.
Yeah.
And we're at the stage now in January where we're going to the first interference trials. So we're a long way down that road. And yes, fingers crossed all round. We're all waiting for standard power and, the 3.8, 4.2, and any future unlicensed spectrum we can lay our hands on. Whether it be dynamic spectrum or not, which it probably will be. We're thirsty for that. My guys haven't got money to pay for spectrum and go to spectrum auctions. 4 meg of 3.5 at the last auction went for 111 million rand, which is $6 million for 4 megahertz of 3.5. So it's not even possible that we think about license. We have to be unlicensed, and we have to get 6 gig because we're sort of running 5.8 in many places. It is so noisy, and 2.4 is gone. I mean, if you put a steak up in the air on a selfie stick and hold it there long enough, it will come down medium rare, I assure you. That's how bad it can be out there. Thanks, Paul.
Many thoughts about what we have been speaking here. First, we need more spectrum, of course, more shared spectrum. In general terms, with 5 gigahertz, we can do most of our projects, but it only takes that we are close to a medium-sized city or town, and then everything starts being overcrowded, and it's very hard to go through it. So more spectrum for sure. The other thing I think we should be very careful is the way we approach regulators in developing countries. When we start talking about standard power and that we need a database for this to work better, some of them feel threatened, because if you need a database with everything that you have been given, as a regulator has given permission to, there's a whole thing happening at the back that you don't see. But in many of these regulators, they had outdated maps. The permission was given with a paper that has not been digitalized, and then it's in a corner somewhere in who knows which building. So when they start realizing that with this technology, everything needs to be like online, they really get frustrated and try to, and that's why in many of these places you see that this thing is not advancing, but it's because of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have been trying to do this in Chile, and we are going to do it ourselves. Like we're going to set up a database and try to showcase it. But every time we have been talking about this with many regulators around our country, it's always, hey, I wish I could do that, but you know what? That would mean that I need to spend all these resources in ordering the house here so that then we can do this. And that I don't see that there's any, they're not in a hurry for that. They have other things in their minds.
So we have 5 minutes or so left, and I know I have a bunch more questions, but I'm just wondering if anyone in the audience has a question they want to ask. Go ahead. I don't think we have a microphone, so you're just gonna have to project.
One of the things I see is we talk about the 3.8, 4.2, and the European initiative, and the UK stuff, which I was involved in when I worked for Ofcom. But one of the weaknesses of that is it's very 5G centric. The actual technologies that you see in there are private 5G, which means that there's an additional cost. Whenever you go into 5G, or 6G will be the same, you pay IPR, which takes a lot of the technologies out of the reach of these low-cost networks. That's probably why your operators won't deploy there. So maybe what you need is something like what Matt said, where you have to have the right technology for the right kind of situation. And maybe you need the right power levels as well, because even standard power, from what I see in 6 gig, probably isn't going to get the distances that you need, whereas maybe in 3.8, 4.2 with a little bit more power, you would. So you need kind of a Wi-Fi-like technology for the 3.8 to 4.2, and you, maybe in some of these rural, ultra-rural situations, you need a bit more power in 6 gig for the BFWA. So there's kind of a two-way thing there, and I also get what the Chilean regulator said there about, you know, we have seen a lot of nervousness throughout the globe from a number of regulators on having to implement AFC databases.
Yeah, so let's take both of those points. So first of all, maybe Sergio, if you could respond to the 3GPP thing, and then also, I mean, I actually, you know, having worked on TV white spaces and been in the valley of death on that one for a long time, just
you're not alone.
This issue of over complexity overwhelming the regulator is definitely a thing, and so maybe we can talk about that as well in response to the comment.
Great, thank you. Very good point when it comes to 3GPP and additional costs. And you have the IPR cost that makes it more expensive. You also have the core cost. You're going to put all of this through a mobile core, even though the network is fixed. So I think it's very important to have this be technology neutral. I've seen some early implementations in 3.8 to 4.2 where 3GPP terminology was specifically mandated or recommended as part of the regulation. Big mistake. If you were to be technology neutral, we're building these products for Europe, and we can't wait to go in all of these countries. And I can, at least promise that Tarana will be there with a solution 3.8 to 4.2 that's going to do much better than 3GPP will, and won't incur those kind of costs. But I think the best that we can do from that perspective is technology neutral. Now, having that kind of power level in 6 GHz would be fantastic. The only way to do that would still be through an AFC type system, number one. And number two, it would have to be in a way in which you're not creating tremendous interference by being able to blast power. If you were to increase the EIRP by just increasing the directivity and not increasing the transmit power, such that the EIRP increase does not come at the cost of too much interference, but in fact, you're actually narrowing the transmission, that's something to be considered. And frankly, in 5.8, in a number of countries, we saw point-to-point solutions that would allow that. It's something to be considered. I would be very happy with that. Not sure that we would get enough support for that from all the stakeholders, but that certainly would be something that I would support.
Chris?
Paul, I do agree that we don't have a situation that one size fits all. It's true. But in the other sense, we have an ecosystem from Wi-Fi that's flexible, that's democratic. So we have to understand that IMT struggles to have penetration outdoor to indoor. All the studies already show that. So the 6 gigahertz must embrace these discussions. We in Brazil, for example, we have further discussions regarding opportunistic and hybrid sharing the upper side of 6 gigahertz. Even it's the last decision didn't not change until now. So we have to see the 6 gigahertz as embracing possibilities to achieve people that are disconnected. In this sense, regulatory approaches changes, and it comes with a net present value completely different. When an ISP evokes all the connections in a community, it's completely different than NetPV. It's related to that community. So we cannot have the same market access approach when we talk about 3GPP and also the 6 gigahertz band. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, so we're almost at time. So maybe just 30 seconds each. Just any final 1 or 2 thoughts you want to just share with this audience.
Okay.
I'll go back to Chris's original question and finish off. Where does the 3.8, 4.2 band belong? Private LTE, private 5G. Not much use out in rural communities, but however, out in those communities, we do have a lot of open-cast mining facilities using autonomous vehicles that require extremely low latency for both operation and the cameras and security and the whole health and safety aspect. Now, whether that is the suitable technology or certainly within opening the 6 gigahertz, those are the parameters that we are looking for. And remember, these mining communities, they also support towns where the workers are associated with that. And many of these mines have actually thrown funds and donated individual WISPs to actually build networks for the supporting communities. So that's how I see it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead. 30 seconds.
I think that we should understand that Wi-Fi ecosystem cannot be put on hold. This expression, it gets me frozen, frozen nowadays. And we have to take off from the table and to give it possibilities to RTOR M2370, that's called, regarding the balance between unlicensed use and licensed one. If it's true, why is that? So let's do it.
I'm going to reiterate what I think is very important from a spectrum perspective. I would hope to allocate 6 GHz, including upper 6, to be shared with unlicensed. I hope that standard power would be allocated in as many countries as possible, and I hope that 3.8 will become available for local area networks and keep CBRS alive in US.
Okay, Marcelo, last word.
As humankind goes forward in the 21st century, the need for spectrum per human keeps growing. And that contrasts with the problem that we have the same spectrum from the origin of times. So I would like to close by saying that the question is not if, it's when. When will the dynamic spectrum allocation will be dominant way we do wireless telecommunications?
Thank you. Thanks to the panelists for a good panel, and appreciate your questions.